Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Please check out the KCC Discord linked in the description down below. There you can talk to me and a whole bunch of KCC fans who hang out there on a regular basis. I look forward to seeing you there. Our first story today comes to us from Functional Psychopath. Dealership said sue, so I did. Let's jump right in. This all started December of last year and just finished last week. So I bought a car from one of those buy here and pay here places. I love the car. It's a Mazda 5 from 2014, basically the smallest minivan I've ever seen. Well, on Christmas, we drove to some family for dinner and celebration. When we went to leave, the car would not start. We checked everything and found out the horn wasn't even connected. Any fuse that wasn't absolutely needed was simply missing, and the tires were the original tires. Beyond that, we hooked up to the computer and it read several errors, but the one getting in the way was the immobilizer. I had never known the van had one. I called AAA and set up towing, but because we were in the middle of nowhere, AAA couldn't get a tow truck to us under our membership, free, so we had to call a tow truck and then submit the bill to AAA after the fact. So, family let us borrow their car, and the van was towed to a shop. A few days later, the shop calls and tells us what's wrong. I live in Texas, a single-party consent state, and I record all my calls thanks to an app on my phone. The long list of car issues isn't important. The point of this van is a basic work van. The only issue they found stopping it from running is the immobilizer is active, and they can't touch it without talking to the dealer. I three-way called the dealership and the shop, and we talked for 17.43 minutes. During this call, the dealership acknowledged we were not behind, and everything should be working unless it malfunctioned. The dealership also gave permission for the shop to bypass it, and we would be reimbursed the towing and repairs. All the shop needed to do to get the van running was bypass the immobilizer, and a couple days later we picked up the van and paid the bill. Both bills came to just under $300, and we started calling the dealership. The first few conversations go well, and the phone rep seemed interested in helping, but mostly I end up getting tossed around from department to department and then disconnected. That went on for some time, and I of course took to Reddit to find out options. As almost always happens, Reddit users know some crazy facts and how to get stuff done. So I followed their advice and kept calling, eventually getting to a supervisor, and the first supervisor said he'd get it taken care of, and we ended the call. 2 more days go by and nothing is heard. So I call back, get tossed around, and then get another manager who says, "We're not responsible for mechanical issues," and hangs up. I call back now quite annoyed, and eventually get back to the same manager. I explain I have all the information and call recordings, including the repair shop 3-way call. He cuts me off and says, "What, are you gonna take us to court over $296.47? I don't think so, but go ahead and sue. We will win, and if that small amount is worth suing to you, you probably don't have the resources to actually sue." This, of course, made me quite upset. So off to a justice of the peace and explain what's happened. They give us a small claims form and explain the process. We can fill it out and pay for a constable to serve the dealership, or fill out the paper and take it to the dealership unfiled and explain everything to a manager in person. We chose the cheaper route because the manager on the phone was right. We didn't have the money to have it served, only filed. So we transcribed the phone calls, found out how to fill out the paper. The hardest part was finding the agent. We didn't know what that meant, but we again turned to Reddit and learned. We gathered the bills and all the paperwork and made our way to the dealership's payment center. I wait in line and see the name of the manager is the same as the manager on the phone that told me to sue. I wait in line, and when it's my turn, I ask to talk to John, and he comes over and sits across from me. After making introductions and I confirm it's the same guy, I start to explain the situation again. As I'm explaining, I see when he recalls talking to me on the phone. He starts to dismiss me, and I explain that he asked me to sue, and I'm here with all my evidence and the unfiled suit, giving him one final chance. He starts to look over the papers and asked if I still had the recordings. I said yes, I could email him a copy. We sit and talk for about an hour as he reads. Then I start with a slight aggravated tone. If something isn't done today, not only am I going to head right back to the courthouse and file, as well as tack on as much for emotional distress and whatever else the clerk hinted at. The clerk was very open-mouthed with ideas, as well as send a copy of everything to every email on the corporate website. At this, our conversation drew the attention of a woman in a power suit who rushes over for a recap. I find out she's John's boss's boss, and she's none too happy about how far things have gone. She assured me that all would be made right and gave me her cell number and email. I gave her the papers and left. The next Monday at 8 a.m., I got a call asking if credit being applied to the account would be acceptable. I say yes, and she explains they will credit $500 to the account as payments. The payments are only $155 every 2 weeks. I agree, and we talk for a few minutes when I ask why it took this much just to get things done. She laughed and said, "It shouldn't have, and certain people are no longer employed at the company." Well, today was Wednesday, and the day of the payment, but when I went to make the payment, it was already done. Thank you, Power Suit Lady. So in this case, that manager John could have just gone to Power Suit Lady and gotten an okay to pay out OP and everything would be done and dealt with. But John for some reason decided to power trip his management position and, well, he managed himself right out of a job. Well done, John. Do me a quick favor and take a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're actually not subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. This next story comes to us from Bearded Alien 13. Father-in-law finds out I'm right the worst possible way. Let's jump right in. So, as the title suggests, this is a story about my father-in-law and his inability to actually listen. English is not my first language, so I apologize if anything is fuzzy or disorganized. Backstory: my father-in-law is the sweetest man alive, and I'd go through a brick wall for him. He's giving, caring, selfless, and overall, a great human being. He was also my boss for almost 3 years while I was working my way through my master's degree. He gave me a job in his small but successful store. He runs that thing as a German train, being firm but fair. I was never treated differently than his other employees and everything was fine. However, he has a fatal flaw when it comes to his business. He simply doesn't listen. He's been doing that for more than 2 decades and he's great at his job. The problem? His PC system and store software also have over 2 decades of experience. I'm talking about a 2000s PC with a 1990s MS-DOS program which holds every single piece of vital information of that store. Inventory, sales register, ranking sales, bills paid, bills to be paid, so on and so forth. Ever since I started working there, I begged him to upgrade his system. I'm not an IT guy, but I've been around computers my whole life, 32 years old, and I know when a system is doomed to fail eventually. You guys want to know how bad that PC is? Google Chrome doesn't run because it's too heavy. It's that bad. I begged him for the years I worked there for an upgrade, both hardware and software, but he just wouldn't budge. Fast forward 3 years, I'm a full-time professor at a small private college in my country, and he's still running the same old system. Last month he called me because he needed my help. He was going away for a week in a small vacation and wanted me to check everything at the store. Just the basics, nothing too crazy. Cool, I've done that before. Off he went to his vacation and off I went to the store first thing in the morning. When I got there, the situation was worse than before. The system used to take 1 or 2 minutes to boot up. Now it's taking 5 minutes and the PC is making a lot of noise. Despite that, the week went smoothly and he came back. When we sat down to talk about the store, after he told everything he did during his time off, I told him, once again, that he needs to upgrade things or he's gonna face some serious problems in the near future. He, once again, won't budge and tries to dismiss me. I keep at it because I know how bad things are getting and how screwed up he'd be if that system fails. After some time, he starts to get mad at me and cuts me off by saying, "I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for almost your entire life. Stop bothering me." I was pissed because I wasn't being rude to him, but whatever. You don't want to listen? Your funeral. Last week he called me, and before I could even muster a hello, he blew off. OP, I need your help. The PC won't turn on. What? What happened? I don't know. I tried to turn it on, the screen flashed, and a bit of smoke came out of the PC. Come here, please. When I got there, he was panicking and frantically walking around inside the store. When I took a glance at the PC, I knew it was dead. I called a friend of mine who works with IT, and he told me to take the system to him and he'd take a look. 2 days later, I heard from my mother-in-law that the power supply, the hard drive, the processor, and the graphics card died. Apparently, it was some sort of domino effect after the power supply died. Now, my lovely yet stubborn father-in-law lost his entire system. We'll have to buy a new PC, new software, and do the inventory of over 1,500 items. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I find that when it comes to the IT world and older people, sometimes you need to put things into terms that they'll understand. So you can look at them and say, well, how long would you expect your car to run if you never change the oil? Or something like, when's the last time you bought new tires for your car? It's a great way to help them understand the importance of replacing parts in a computer as the years go by so that it doesn't completely fail and leave you stranded. This next story comes to us from Objective Uncone. Build my fence and do it exactly as I designed. Let's jump right in. So I have posted several stories about Pops, my grandfather, on Reddit over the last week, and well, people seem to like them. Pops was an old school, rough as nails World War II vet farmer. Not only that, in my small town in Northern Ontario, Pops and his brother were the only contractors in town. Pops took a job from an out-of-towner, some rich guy from Toronto, who purchased a small plot of land on the lake for his vacation home. The guy hired Pops to put up a fence all around the house, a 6-foot-high monster fence. The darn thing is still up today, it's ugly AF, and completely out of place with the natural beauty of the area. From day one, while marking out lines, the guy was a real prick to Pops, a real nitpick POS who thought of himself as a top-tier designer. Pops went to the guy because a problem with his design, the guy didn't give a single F. When Pops tried to point out the problem, the guy was like, I don't care about your opinion. I paid you to work for me, get it done. I have guests coming up at the end of the month, so get it done. Don't call me with any problems, get it done. Pops being Pops, he just gave him an okie dokie, can I get that in writing? The guy did just that, and Pops did exactly what he wanted. The guy got his fence built. Pops told one of the townies that lived near the road leading to the place to give him a call if he sees Mr. Moneybag show up. It took 3 weeks and the prick showed up with his entire family in tow. Pops got a call from the townie telling him, hey, you're about to get a visitor. Well, as I said, Pops followed the direction exactly as written. A fence completely around the house about 40 feet away from the place. What the plans didn't have was an opening for the driveway or any gate to get in. I wish I was there to see the guy's face when he got to his nice vacation home. Hell, I would have loved to have seen his face when he showed up to the farm to tell off Pops. When Pops told me this story, he said he was sitting on the front porch sipping on his whiskey as that prick rolled up. The guy screamed at Pops, calling him a dumb hick, and Pops just smiled and said, remember when you told me to build it exactly as you designed? If you don't like it, redesign it and fix it yourself. As I said, that guy still owns the place and he stays far out of town. And that fence is still up today. It's ugly as hell, but has stood the test of time. Have we not learned that if a contractor's telling you there's a problem with something you're paying them to do, that they might know exactly what they're talking about because they've been doing this for a long time? And you, well, when's the last time you put up a fence yourself? Huh? I absolutely love the way your Pops complied with this one. There's a lot of older stories about older contractors where they were able to get away with things like this, although I think these days, people would just turn around and sue you, and it just takes the fun out of some malicious compliance. This next story comes to us from Avwi. Sure, I will be paying back student grants. Let's jump right in. This isn't my story but of my relative, but here goes. We live in a very good country where we have something called student grants. Every student that goes to college or university gets a certain amount of money deposited every month on their checking account by the government. Aside from that, you get a free travel pass for all the public transport, so that is pretty nice. They reverted this practice after 30 years a few years ago and made it a loan and re-reverted it again this year, but that is another story. The idea is, of course, that everyone, regardless of their financial background, has a fair chance at higher education. During the time this story was relevant, 2001 to 2005, it was about 100 euros a month, upwards to 800 euros a month. But in the latter case, it meant that both your parents should be completely devoid of any income. However, obviously there are some caveats. If you make some money by having some side job, you can make about 5,000 a year, or you need to stop these grants, which is fair. FYI, living costs in the major student cities that time were like 400 a month for housing, 120 a month for groceries. Tuition was like 120 a month euros as well, to give some perspective. It should be said that a lot of students just use the money to drink a lot of beer. Anyway, to the story. My relative is a very hardworking guy. He started college and finished it in 3 years, which requires normally 4 years. And he did a master's at university in 1 year, where it normally required 2 years for this master. He was active in councils, did non-profit work, etc., etc. In this period, he also started his own freelance business to support him and future wife and kid a little more. He was very precise with monitoring his income and made sure to stop his grants every year when he would go over the limit and start it up again next year. However, this is where he made a small calculation error. See, he assumed he could stop his grants when he was nearing the limit and continue the rest of the year. But the government doesn't calculate it like that at all. They look at the income you had extra that whole year, divide it by 365 or 366, and look at which moment you crossed it. So how does this matter? He had like 500 euros extra income per month on average. So somewhere in the end of October, he would call the government and say he would like to stop the grant. Everything solved. But then, in the holiday period, he would work a little extra hard and would get 700 euros in December. So the government would look at the end of the year and see he made 6,200. They would divide it by 365 and calculate that he would have crossed the threshold at 294 days, which would be October 20th or something. And he called at the end of October, example the 28th, a few days of difference. However, the government, fast as they are, didn't act on this immediately, so he finished his master's, and after a few months, he gets a letter from the government, basically saying, "You've been getting the grant and weren't allowed, so you are forced to pay everything back with interest, and with an added fine." Please note that the grant also includes the free public transportation card. The total sum was something like 12,000 euro. He was devastated, and called them to say he understood he made an error, but he was off by a few days. Besides, it took him way shorter to study than most people, so in that sense, he didn't use the grant as much as other people. Some people study for 8 years and get the grant. That has changed now, by the way. But nope, they were not open to any sort of leniency or reduction. Unable to pay it directly, he asked if there was some way of paying it monthly, and there was. So he started doing that. However, here is where he started to get maliciously compliant. Instead of paying the exact amount, he decided to pay €1 higher than the required amount. So the required amount was 150 euro, and he would pay 151. The extra euro more would trigger something in their systems because they couldn't account for it. So they would contact him and he would ask for a reimbursement. This would take a lot of hassle for them. And then next month he would do it again. And again, and again. It took him 3 minutes a month, but it would take them a lot of time every month with figuring out what happened. Nowadays, it is a little bit more automated, but back then it was fun. Look, we live in a good country where these grants are possible, so we are fortunate. And he was able to pay everything back, and he made an error. He knows that. However, it was a bitter pill to swallow, and I understand that he got some satisfaction out of doing this. After sitting back and thinking about this story for a second, the only thing that keeps going through my head is how easy it is to get money for school where OP lives. Because here in Canada, and I think as well in the USA, that stuff just doesn't happen. Here, you get to go to school, and you get to take out a loan to go to school, and you get to pay off that loan for the next 15 to 20 years. You know, because that's how it should be done, right? Check out all 4 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.